Emergency podcast. The Marlins declare trade season now open. AJ Puk traded to the Arizona Diamondbacks in exchange for two prospects. Tons to get into on an emergency Friday morning. Locked on Marlins.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from England and welcome to Locked On Marlins, your daily Marlins pod. I'm your host, Peter Pratt. Hit me up at Miami Marlins _UK. Happy Friday to you guys. This is an emergency podcast, but of course, thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. This is your team every day, and it could be even twice or three times a day in this next few days. This is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Reminder, there is also a YouTube channel. Make sure you hit subscribe over on the Locked On Marlins YouTube channel and join me in the comments. Equally, you can see here, it's sunny. Normally, I record of an evening. This is an early morning emergency pod extravaganza. And the news that is breaking and has broken, AJ Puk traded to the Arizona Diamondbacks. The Marlins and Diamondbacks continue to hook up. That has been multiple deadlines over the past few years where deals have been done. Tons to get into, both in terms of AJ Puk, why the Diamondbacks, why now? Equally, what about these two prospects back? As you can see, if you are watching the show, one of the items in this agenda is just all in caps, big bat. So there's tons to get into here. And we're going to dig into the trade package itself. Is this a fat dub for the Marlins? Is this a fat dub for Peter Bendix? And is this a sign of what's to come? I think so. Nevertheless, this episode is sponsored by our good friends over at SupplyHouse. And SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to get parts fast. Shop your next plumbing, h-vac, or electrical job and get fast shipping from coast to coast at SupplyHouse.com. So, guys, we were looking at the bullpen. Spoke about it on yesterday's episode as well. The Marlins have the bullpen's humming generally. Like any one of the relievers could have been moved at any time. And so this is in line with expectations that the Marlins are. We know Tanner Scott will be moved and has to be moved because of an expiring contract. But there are many other relievers in this Marlins bullpen right now that are in a different situation in that they are performing very well. And there's multiple names, but they have years of control. It's a different situation to Tanner Scott. So for me, the interesting part here was which ones were the ones that inevitably end up traded away for the Marlins to continue this pathway of one eye on the present, one eye on the future. Both eyes firmly on the future with this trade, as pretty much all trades have been with Peter Bendix. I think he needs to rephrase that one as this is both eyes on the future. Nevertheless, AJ Puk, let's go back to AJ Puk last season. Acquired by the Marlins via a trade with the Oakland A's, and that was in exchange a 1-for-1 swap. But AJ Puk was coming off his best and most healthy year. He transitioned into the bullpen, had a full year, and looked a legitimate high-leverage arm. JJ Bleday, at that point, from a Marlins perspective, had stalled, I would describe it as, in his development. The Marlins equally, I think, had a bit of a logjam around in the outfield, as we've seen it play out with Jesus Sanchez, with Brian De La Cruz, Jazz Chisholm Jr., there's other names, Avisel Garcia back then too. So there was multiple guys around. Peyton Burdick was the other guy I was trying to think about then. So it made sense. The Marlins struggling in high leverage and AJ Puk acquired to be the closer. At the time, it wasn't stated he'd be the closer. He slotted into the ninth inning in the 2023 campaign. And what we saw in first half AJ Puk was sensational as the Marlins closer. Reminder, at that point, Tanner Scott was just working like 6th, 7th, 8th inning guy. Tanner Scott had issues with his command the prior year. He closed a few games, had a few saves, but the walks were a significant issue for Tanner Scott then. So it's funny how things evolve, right? Puk acquired straight into the ninth inning for the Marlins, and the Marlins go on a great run, particularly in that first half. AJ Puk being a huge part of that in the ninth inning. Very interesting point here. And if you remember back to the bullpen, it was asked to do so much in 23. It was just led the team in 23. Yes, there was so many one-run wins, and it was down to the pen, but the pen was working in high leverage day after day after day. And that took its toll on AJ Puk. We saw that. He ends up on the IL. And really, with AJ Puk, overuse, I think, kicked in. He was being asked to do too much. It was effective, but he was asked to do too much. And in the end, his body, I think, ground down a touch. And he then moved out of the closing spot and was more working in setup situations in the second half. By this point, Tanner Scott had fully emerged and was locked in as the Marlins closer. Get then to the offseason. And then the Marlins make a very curious decision to consider moving AJ Puk into the rotation. One of the strangest moves I think we've seen from a Marlins perspective. So AJ Puk, the decision was made, even though his body broke down as a reliever, and the results demonstrated that in 23, AJ Puk into the rotation. He works through spring and was immense in spring as a starter. He then goes into the season and a handful of starts, and it was the opposite of immense. It was absolutely disgraceful as a starter. Literally couldn't throw strikes. And that experiment ended very quickly, rightly so. We then get to what's happened subsequently. AJ Puk then transitions back into the bullpen after a brief stint on the IL. He's back into the pen. He's back throwing what he was throwing historically, few grip changes, etc. And then from what we've seen with AJ Puk as a reliever, I mean, Tanner Scott's had all the headlines and he's working in the highest of leverage spots. But AJ Puk has not been far behind Tanner Scott at all. And so Eli Sussman was on this one, a few weeks back saying, listen, AJ Puk is, he has a high probability to be moved at this point because he's under the radar, being absolutely excellent. If you look at AJ Puk's numbers for the year combined in 2024, you're not going to be as excited. But when you look at or you remove the stats specifically for when he started games to when he was acting as a reliever, then things look significantly different. Significantly different. When we look at him as a starter, for example, he had a 263 whip. 263 whip. When we look at him as a reliever in 2024, he has a 0.76 whip. Absolutely elite. He has a FIP of 242 and an XFIP of 298. His K rate skyrockets as a reliever. K rate almost touching 30%. K per 9 almost touching 10. And a K to walk ratio of 5.5. This is the real AJ Puk. And the other thing too for AJ Puk, 2 extra years of control beyond this year. So it's the Diamondbacks get this year of Puk. They need him, by the way. The Diamondbacks get 2 this year plus 2 more of AJ Puk, and relatively cheap at this point versus the production. AJ Puk's going to be a big part of the Diamondbacks bullpen looking forward. Clearly, I don't closely follow the Diamondbacks. You head to Roster Resource, checking out, okay, what's the bullpen looking like at the moment? All you see is right-handed relievers in the main. Pretty much everyone apart from one. They have one lefty option. One lefty option. What we've seen for the Marlins and how successful they were last year, it was almost 50-50, where you had 4 or 5 lefties. The Marlins are so heavily weighted to left-handed relievers. And we've seen with that mix and the talent, clearly, how effective they can be. So from a Diamondbacks perspective, this fit makes a ton of sense because Puk, it's clear they need a leverage lefty guy. Puk has proven not only in 23 in the closing role, but in 24 since returning back to the relief role that he'd done so well in prior. that he is the real deal as a reliever. The difference this year, Craig Mish called it out, and I think it was a great call out. Maybe it slipped a touch under the radar, but the way Puk is being used this year has been completely different as a reliever. Where last year, because the Marlins needed him, and they were in one-run games every single day, Puk was asked to do too much. Too many outings, back-to-back, back-to-back-to-back. Too much. He broke down, worn down, as was expected, and then he flamed out a touch toward the back end of the season. The Marlins this year, because they're not in the hunt, there's not been as many one-run wins, that's for certain. They've been able to manage Puk's usage in a completely different way. And we are seeing stunning results from him. When we look back, I think we have to kind of look back on Puk and consider the Bleday for Puk trade. Like, how do we see that now? And overall, I'd say, listen, Bleday's had a great year this year. He's had a real nice year. He's broken out. He's a top 10 center fielder, I guess, by the metrics. In terms of WAR, etc. Would you still make this deal? 100% for me. I loved the Puk deal at the time. Bleday has improved. That's fine. Young guys will improve or can improve. But would you make this deal? 100%. AJ Puk was a massive part of the Marlins' success in 23. He was exactly what the Marlins needed. A trusty lefty closer that throws strikes, gets strikeouts, and that was a huge part of why the Marlins made the 2023 postseason. If you wouldn't have made that deal, would the Marlins have made it in 23? I don't think so. I honestly don't believe that without Puk, and if you had Bleday, you swap, Bleday versus Puk, and the Marlins making the postseason. I don't think they are. I think that's how critical AJ Puk was, particularly in the start of the year, when the Marlins really created that cushion. Like I mentioned, then as with bullpens, things flex, things change. But overall, I'd still make that deal. I know Bleday is kicked on now, but Puk, huge part of 23. And really, Puk then becomes a huge part of the future for the Marlins because they get two prospects back from the Diamondbacks. And both of them look to be extremely intriguing. One of which in particular could be seen as potentially, right now anyway, the number one offensive prospect for the Marlins. So if you can turn a setup guy, potential closer in waiting, maybe, but if you can turn that into your top offensive prospect in the system, I think it makes a ton of sense. I think it makes a ton of sense for the Diamondbacks, this move. They're in the mix. They're in the hunt. They need lefties, no doubt about it. Puk fits the profile. The cost appears to be relatively high. No doubt. So I think Diamondbacks fans will see the value in this immediately. And I think Marlins fans listening in, and let me know in the comments how you're feeling about this one. But I'm pretty convinced the Marlins fans are going to reflect on this and feel like they've had an absolute stunner of a deal. And if this is the type of deal we can expect at this deadline for relievers with multiple years of control, and let's not forget, they still have others, lefties as well, then this deadline could be extremely encouraging for the Marlins. Let's talk about the guys that are coming back shortly. But before we do that, firstly, let's let you know about our good friends over at Booking.com. Yes, sir. And this episode of Locked On Marlins is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. And with summer travel heating up, especially travel for baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities you always secretly wanted to learn about. Yes, we're talking about your rival cities. Yes, we're talking about Milwaukee, for example. With hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com, you might just find your perfect stay, even in your baseball rival city. For me, Booking.com is the go-to app. When the London series was in London a few weeks back, it's where I went to. Straight onto Booking.com. I know where I need to be, find the location, sort by price, find what I'm looking for in terms of hotel. I want a good quality breakfast. It's all there. Found what I wanted. Perfect. Booking.com is the go-to place for me. So from hotels that look over stadiums to family-friendly resorts, Booking.com has so many choices across the US for your summer travel this MLB season. The right stay can make you a fan of any US city even your rivals. Book today on booking.com on the site or in the booking.com app. And this episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. Yes, sir. And guys, I love sports. As you know, everyone loves sports to listen to this. And I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down in other sports, we get fewer games and the sports, they aren't sporting like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Welcome back to Locked On Marlins, guys, an emergency podcast. AJ Puk traded to the Diamondbacks. AJ Puk has been a stud reliever this year. No doubt about it. He was absolutely not a stud starter, but the Diamondbacks needed some lefty leverage relief. They get Puk for this year. They also get Puk for 2 more seasons. AJ Puk acquired from the A's for JJ Bleday. So you're still keeping track, right? Bleday turns into Puk, who turns into a stud, brings the Marlins postseason baseball in 23. Then Puk as a starter, no good, back to reliever. Now a Diamondback. And for that pleasure, the Marlins acquire 2 prospects from the Diamondbacks. We start with Davison De Los Santos and also outfielder Andrew Pinter. So the Marlins get 2 guys back. And it's fair to say the majority of conversation thus far has been specifically around De Los Santos. The numbers are eye-popping. There's no other way to describe it. De Los Santos has been, for his age as well in particular, has been immense in 2024. Absolutely immense. Let's start with his double A aspect of 2024. He had an OPS of 1.122. He was slugging .696 in double A earlier this year in Amarillo. That is 38 games, and in those 38 games, 14 home runs. Unreal. The Diamondbacks then promote him up to AAA. So he's now 21 in AAA. He's played 49 games in AAA. He's hit 14 home runs there as well. He's OPSing at 926. So a combined OPS across both levels, AA, AAA, at age 21 of 1.011. 28 total home runs. Unreal power production and power profile from De Los Santos. Is this a flash in the pan? No, it's not. 2023, 20 home runs. 2022, 22 home runs. That was across multiple levels as well there. So this guy looks to be a prototypical first baseman. He's down as first base / third base. Sounds like Jacob Berry all over again, but this stick is not Jacob Berry. Right-handed hitter, but looks to be an absolute monster. This is the type of profile that will excite any fan, because we love bombs. And when you go and dig into the numbers a little bit more and start to look at the profile looks exactly how you'd expect it to look, where barrel rate's insane, exit velo's insane, all of the metrics that align to a stud power hitter. You then look at some of the other metrics where it's not quite as encouraging. And it's the typical ones where it doesn't take a ton of walks, strike rate's a little bit too high. He's a free swinging, prototypical stud power stick. Big bat. Big bat. This is the type of guy that is going to excite fans. This is the type of guy that can inspire fans that are maybe a little bit, on the fence regarding rebuilds. But the reality is the Marlins did not need AJ Puk at all. They're going to be terrible for 2024. They're already terrible for 2024. They're going to be terrible in 2025. AJ Puk, not required. Not required. But what the Marlins certainly needed was a legitimate power stick and one that's a little bit more advanced than, obviously first round draft pick, PJ Orlando. So this is the type of guy that, he's delivering this at AAA. The question will be is, well, how soon do you see this guy? He's not on the 40-man right now. He was selected actually in the Rule 5 draft, but returned from the Guardians. So the Diamondbacks kind of lucked out there in some ways. So he wasn't quite ready for big league action, but the Guardians were seeing him as almost big league ready because they took him in the Rule 5. So that to me is an indicator that he's close. He's mashing. He's absolutely going insane at AA, AAA. The Marlins are about to have a vacancy at first base. Josh Bell, expiring deal. Yes, okay, there's a few other options that can maybe play first base. But I do wonder how quickly we see De Los Santos. Is it going to be next year? Could you legitimately see De Los Santos at first base for the Marlins next year? Maybe. Could we even see De Los Santos up with the Marlins after the deadline? Once Josh Bell has been moved, because I think Josh Bell will be moved. Could we see him that soon? Probably not. The reason being, we've already seen with Max Meyer, Peter Bendix, the Marlins organization, they're prioritizing club control for top prospects. Max Meyer being the obvious example of that. So although he probably is big league ready, he isn't on the 40-man. I don't see the Marlins having a need to accelerate that process because the sooner you put him on the 40-man, then you have to burn an option if they don't want him to be playing straight away. Then you lose that option year and he's down to 2. No need to do that. My expectation is for De Los Santos, he reports to AA, AAA, whatever it might be, wherever there's the best fit for him. He's still young. There's no reason why he couldn't go down to AA Pensacola and just start rolling there. Again, not certain where he's going to land. We'll wait and see on that. But overall, this guy has just got insane numbers. Every single Marlins fan will be looking at these numbers and going, yes, give me some of that for a reliever that we didn't need. And to be honest with you, if it was 1-for-1 with AJ Puk for De Los Santos, I would have been happy. Honestly, you didn't have to give me Pinter. AJ Puk, 1-for-1 for De Los Santos, I'd have been completely happy with. Let me know your thoughts on that. Would you have seen it the same way? But for the Marlins to then get Andrew Pinter in as well, boy, oh boy, this is just icing on the cake. And this is it. This is the situation where timing is everything. The deadline creates such opportunity for the Marlins this year. It really does, because the Marlins hold all the aces. They hold all the relief aces at this point. They've got so many relievers that are proven to be impact relievers. They've got multiple lefties that are proven to be impact lefties. And there's so much value in that, to the point of the Marlins getting 2 of their best offensive prospects back for 2 and a bit years of AJ Puk. Let's hit the final ads, and then we're going to talk about the second piece of this. Yes, there was a second piece in return. But before we do that, let's let you know about our good friends over at SupplyHouse. Yes, sir. And guys, you can get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trade, SupplyHouse.com. SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, h-vac, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? No problem. Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business, and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com/TM. And order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. All right, guys, final segment here on this emergency podcast on Friday morning. It's 26th of July, Friday. The deadline is still multiple days away, but the Marlins declare trade season and this deadline now open. Funny enough, Marlins drop a deal. Who follows that up? Surprise, surprise, the Rays drop a deal. Randy Arozarena traded to the Seattle Mariners We haven't got time to talk about that today, but that is very pertinent to maybe some of the other plans that the Marlins had around this deadline. Some seeing the Mariners as the best fit for Jazz Chisholm Jr. Does this deal mean that they're no longer interested in Jazz? I don't think so. I think this signals that the Mariners are buying. To be honest with you, the return that they had to give up for Randy Arozarena, in my opinion, I mean, there's a player to be named later, it looked light, very light. Very interesting, that deal. I feel for the Rays fans. It's very funny to follow the Rays and the fans. Got a lot of UK-based Rays fans. Their sentiment is how I expect it to be. They're used to this. The Rays way. You trade the Arozarena, stud guy, you get prospects. It always hurts. These deals always sting. But the Rays model, this is the model, but it delivers the consistent situation where they're always in the mix, always in the hunt, always in the postseason. And as Marlins fans, we need to readjust and recalibrate our expectations for these upper arbitration guys. Arozarena, stud. Any long-term extension? No. Moved. For a couple of guys that on the face of it seem underwhelming. Nevertheless, that's a big move. The Marlins signal that the trade deadline was open, and then the Rays follow it quickly. So very interested to see how quickly this market moves, because I think Tanner Scott could well be the next guy to go. Generally, they may keep it to the deadline. I don't know, but this signals to the market that teams are active, and all of a sudden, names start to come off the board. Arozarena gone. Look around going, man, I wanted Randy. Okay, Jazz is option 2, maybe. Man, I wanted AJ Puk. Maybe Andrew Nardi's the next. I mean, is Andrew Nardi a better reliever than Puk? You could think of it that way. Don't know. I know Tanner Scott for certain is. Anyway, let's finish up here on the second piece back. Like I mentioned, I would have completely been happy with Davison De Los Santos 1-for-1 with AJ Puk, considering his offensive profile. I just want to call out, by the way, just on De Los Santos, forgot to mention. And it was funny because I was looking at the Sergio Romo trade a few days ago and reminding myself of that Sergio Romo, plus I think it was Chris Valamont, over to the Twins. And that's how the Marlins got Lewin Diaz as part of that. Lewin Diaz's profile, not dissimilar in some ways, De Los Santos. Heirar Encarnacion's profile as well, not dissimilar to De Los Santos. So that's the only thing to call out here is with Lewin Diaz, at the time of acquisition, early stage in his development, we're like, this guy is going to be an absolute stud. He's going to be a lock to be the Marlins first baseman for many years. Sexy glove, gold glove, power stick, you name it. That was the profile we were getting for Lewin Diaz. Where's him now? Where is Lewin Diaz now? Well, he's not in the big leagues and he's flamed out. So these are the risks that exist. De Los Santos may well be carving it up against AA and AAA arms. You have to remember, the ballpark that you played in, I believe it was relatively hitter-friendly, particularly earlier on this year. We then get the situation that there's so many injuries. Like, what's the level of pitching down at AAA at this point? This is very questionable, I would say. And so let's take these numbers with a pinch of salt. We've been here before. We've had guys like Lewin Diaz, like Encarnacion. On the face of it, look like they're going to be the next big thing, the next power stick for the Marlins. Neither of them have panned out. Let's hope that De Los Santos is that guy finally. I don't think we'll see him this year. And frankly, I don't think we'll see him next year. I think the Marlins will play it slow because the window is not open right now. So I think they play it slow. Anyway, they also acquire Andrew Pinter in this deal, who has been, he's 23, Pinter. He's been playing at various levels this year, and he's been playing primarily at center field. So the Marlins continue to stock up on center fielders. Again, another nod to, maybe the Marlins could be losing a center fielder very soon. Offensively, though, the profile looks nice. We think about, a high A predominantly this year. We've spent most of his time. An OPS of 919, which is encouraging. He's been hitting he hit 304 down at high A, slugging 516. So, encouraging profile. Plenty of contact in there, some power, plenty of stolen bases is what you'd expect. And also, 35 walks versus 43 Ks. So again, the profile there at high A looks encouraging. So overall, like, you have to be encouraged by this return as well. The way the prospect rankings see Pinter is that he's probably going to slot into the top 20 for the Marlins in terms of their farm system. So a top 20 prospect, probably like a top 15 guy, plus De Los Santos, who's going to be top 5 prospect for the Marlins, you'd have to imagine at this point, for 2 and a bit years of AJ Puk. It feels, on the face of it, to be a very interesting deal, and one that could favor the Marlins in the longer term. They need to get the development right with De Los Santos. I think they're going to play it slow, so he's going to be given the time. I don't think he's going to be thrust into big league action anytime soon. If he was Rule 5 eligible last year, he will be protected on the 40-man come the end of this campaign. They then have 3 minor league option years, and so it could be a number of years before we see De Los Santos. The Marlins are going to need a first baseman very soon, but I think there's some other candidates that maybe are cheaper and maybe aren't part of the longer-term situation here for the Marlins. Nevertheless, the Marlins have been this is the first major deal in advance of the deadline. Puk to the Diamondbacks. The Diamondbacks desperately needed some left-handed leverage relief. This makes a ton of sense for them. The Marlins are able to get 2 prospects back, a huge bat in De Los Santos that looks to be a stunning profile, one that we've seen relatively recently as well that didn't pan out. So those are the risks. Andrew Pinter looks to be a really nice secondary piece. Center fielder, nice contact, some power, some speed. He's got everything to look for in a center fielder prospect profile. And older as well than De Los Santos. He's 23. Overall, I assume that the Marlins fans will be extremely excited by this deal, considering Puk delivers no meaningful value for the 24 campaign. We don't need him, or 25 campaign, because we're not going to be good. But there's some prospects here that could well fit into a good portion of the future for the Marlins. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, guys. Thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. I'm back later in the day, actually. Smoking Joe Brazzaro is on the show, so we'll be recapping this one as well with Joe, equally looking ahead. And who knows, by then, another deal could be done. Look forward to seeing you later, guys.